and stop this team. I mean, literally stopped it. He worked for John Ford forever after that because Ford understood what kind of a man he was.
Picture this. You're 80 years old. You've spent over 5 decades in Hollywood, and you've watched the industry transform from the inside out. You've worked with legends, survived countless regime changes, and earned the respect of peers through sheer grit and authenticity. At this point in your life, what would it take for you to finally break your silence about the actors you simply couldn't stand working with? For Sam Elliott, that moment has arrived. The man known for his measured words, his iconic mustache, and his unwavering commitment to authenticity has reached a point where diplomatic silence no longer serves him. After decades of biting his tongue, Elliott is finally naming names, and the list is more surprising than you might expect. This isn't about petty Hollywood feuds or ego clashes. This is about something deeper, a fundamental clash of values that has been brewing in Elliott's mind for years. These 7 actors represent everything Elliott believes is wrong with modern Hollywood, and his reasons for disliking them reveal as much about his own character as they do about theirs. To understand why Sam Elliott developed such strong opinions about these particular actors, you have to understand the code he's lived by throughout his career. Elliott didn't stumble into Hollywood stardom. He earned it through decades of small roles, westerns, and character work that built his reputation one performance at a time. Born in Sacramento and raised in Oregon, Elliott grew up with genuine Western values. His father worked for the Department of the Interior, and Elliott spent his childhood around real cowboys, ranchers, and outdoorsmen. When he moved to Hollywood in the 1960s, he brought those values with him, a belief in hard work, authenticity, and letting your actions speak louder than your words. Elliott's breakthrough didn't come until he was in his 30s, with roles in Lifeguard and The Legacy. He spent years playing supporting characters, often uncredited, learning his craft the hard way. This journey taught him that acting wasn't about fame or attention. It was about truth, about disappearing into a character so completely that the audience forgot they were watching a performance. This philosophy shaped everything Elliott did. He turned down roles that didn't align with his values, even when they would have boosted his career. He refused to play villains who were evil without motivation, or characters who felt artificially constructed. For Elliott, every role had to serve a larger truth about human nature. As Hollywood evolved around him, Elliott watched with growing concern. Method acting gave way to spectacle. Substance was replaced by social media presence. The quiet, contemplative approach he valued was being drowned out by actors who seemed more interested in headlines than honest storytelling. The feud that brought Elliott's frustrations to a boiling point began with The Power of the Dog. When Jane Campion's psychological western earned critical acclaim and Oscar nominations, Elliott couldn't stay silent. But his criticism wasn't really about the film itself. It was about Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal of Phil Burbank, a character Elliott felt was fundamentally misunderstood. Elliott's problem with Cumberbatch wasn't personal. They'd never worked together, never had a bad interaction. It was philosophical. Here was a classically trained British actor attempting to embody the American West, and in Elliott's view, missing the mark entirely. "What the hell does this Brit know about the American West?" Elliott asked on Mark Maron's podcast, and the question revealed his deeper frustration. Elliott had spent his career studying real cowboys, ranchers, and Western men. He understood their silence, their stoicism, their complex relationship with masculinity and emotion. When he watched Cumberbatch's performance, he saw technical skill, but no soul. A beautifully crafted performance that felt hollow because it lacked lived experience. The backlash to Elliott's comments was swift and harsh. Critics accused him of gatekeeping, of being unable to accept new interpretations of Western masculinity. But Elliott's frustration wasn't about protecting his territory. It was about protecting the truth. He believed that some stories require more than acting technique. They require understanding, and that understanding comes from experience, not research. Cumberbatch, for his part, had prepared extensively for the role. He learned to roll cigarettes, studied ranch work, and even stayed in character between takes. But for Elliott, no amount of preparation could replace the fundamental cultural understanding that comes from growing up in the West. It wasn't about effort, it was about authenticity. If Benedict Cumberbatch represented misplaced effort, Nicolas Cage represented something even more troubling to Elliott: the elevation of chaos over craft. When Elliott and Cage worked together on Ghost Rider, the experience confirmed every suspicion Elliott had about modern Hollywood's approach to acting. Elliott had always believed that the best acting came from restraint. A raised eyebrow could convey more than a monologue. A pause could be more powerful than a scream. His heroes were actors like Gary Cooper and John Wayne, men who commanded the screen through presence, not pyrotechnics. Cage represented the opposite approach. His performances were volcanic, unpredictable, and often brilliant, but they violated everything Elliott believed about the craft. Where Elliott saw discipline, Cage offered chaos. Where Elliott valued subtlety, Cage embraced excess. During the filming of Ghost Rider, Elliott watched Cage work with a mixture of professional respect and personal bewilderment. Cage's commitment was undeniable. He threw himself into every scene with total abandon. But Elliott couldn't shake the feeling that Cage was performing for the cameras even when they weren't rolling, treating every moment as an opportunity for theatrical expression. Elliott's criticism of Cage wasn't about talent. He recognized that Cage was gifted. It was about purpose. Elliott believed acting should serve the story, not overshadow it. When he watched Cage work, he saw an actor who made every scene about himself, who bent stories to accommodate his larger-than-life personality rather than disappearing into the character. The philosophical divide between them was clear in their approach to the Western genre. Elliott saw Westerns as stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances with quiet dignity. Cage saw them as opportunities for operatic performances that pushed the boundaries of what was possible on screen. Both approaches had merit, but they were incompatible, and Elliott couldn't respect what he saw as showboating disguised as art. Perhaps no actor frustrated Elliott more than Kevin Costner, and the reason was simple. Costner had built an entire career on playing the kind of roles Elliott felt he understood better than anyone. When Costner starred in Wyatt Earp and later Yellowstone, Elliott saw a Hollywood pretty boy cosplaying as a cowboy and succeeding where more authentic actors had struggled. Elliott's resentment toward Costner wasn't about jealousy, though outsiders might have seen it that way. It was about authenticity. Elliott had grown up around real ranchers and cowboys. He understood their speech patterns, their body language, their relationship with the land. When he watched Costner play similar characters, he saw someone who had learned to act like a cowboy without understanding what it meant to be one. The success of Yellowstone particularly galled Elliott. Here was a show that millions of viewers accepted as an authentic portrayal of modern ranch life, but Elliott saw it as a glossy soap opera that perpetuated myths about the West. Costner's character, John Dutton, was everything Elliott disliked about Hollywood's approach to Western storytelling: too polished, too articulate, too concerned with looking good while being tough. Elliott reportedly turned down multiple opportunities to appear on Yellowstone, including a significant recurring role that would have been perfect for his screen persona. Friends say he dismissed the show as soap opera in boots, unable to respect what he saw as a fundamental misunderstanding of Western values. The tension between Elliott and Costner was never personal. They maintained professional courtesy during industry events, but Elliott couldn't hide his frustration with an actor who had achieved massive success playing characters Elliott felt he could have portrayed with more authenticity. It wasn't about career rivalry, it was about artistic integrity. If Elliott's problem with other actors was about authenticity or restraint, his issues with Jared Leto were about something more fundamental: respect for the craft itself. Leto's approach to method acting, with its elaborate publicity stunts and extreme commitment to staying in character, represented everything Elliott found objectionable about modern Hollywood. Elliott had always believed that acting was about discipline and preparation, but that discipline should be invisible to audiences. The work happened in rehearsal, in character development, in understanding the story. What happened on set should be professional, collaborative, and focused on serving the film. Leto's method approach, sending live rats to co-stars on Suicide Squad, remaining in character between takes, creating elaborate backstories that became part of the film's publicity, struck Elliott as performance art rather than serious acting. It was acting designed to generate headlines rather than serve the story. Elliott's frustration with Leto wasn't about the results. He acknowledged that Leto was capable of powerful performances. It was about the process. Elliott believed that truly committed actors did their work quietly, without fanfare or publicity stunts. They disappeared into their characters without making that disappearance part of the story. The two actors reportedly almost worked together on an independent film that was later restructured around Leto's involvement. When Elliott learned about the change, he quietly withdrew from the project. No public statements, no dramatic exits, just a professional decision to distance himself from what he saw as a circus approach to serious work. Working with Ashton Kutcher on The Ranch presented Elliott with a different kind of challenge: how to maintain professional standards while working with someone he viewed as fundamentally unserious about the craft. Kutcher's background in sitcoms and romantic comedies, combined with his tech investments and social media presence, represented everything Elliott felt was wrong with modern celebrity culture. Elliott's problem with Kutcher wasn't about likability. By all accounts, Kutcher was personable, professional, and respectful on set. It was about commitment to the craft. Elliott saw Kutcher as someone who had stumbled into acting success without developing the deep understanding of character and story that Elliott believed was essential. During filming, Elliott maintained his characteristic professionalism, but crew members noticed his reserved attitude toward his co-star. Elliott's approach to scenes was methodical and grounded in character motivation. Kutcher's was more instinctive and comedic, even in dramatic moments. The contrast highlighted their different approaches to the same material. Elliott's frustration with Kutcher represented a broader concern about Hollywood's star system. He'd watched actors like Kutcher achieve massive success based on charm and timing rather than craft and dedication. While Elliott didn't begrudge Kutcher's success, he couldn't respect what he saw as a casual approach to serious work. The experience of working with Kutcher reinforced Elliott's belief that acting had become too focused on personality and not enough on character. Kutcher's natural charisma translated well to screen, but Elliott felt it was surface-level appeal rather than the deep character work that created lasting performances. Elliott's criticism of The Power of the Dog didn't just target Benedict Cumberbatch, it also implicitly criticized director Jane Campion's vision for the film. When Campion fired back at Elliott during her Directors Guild acceptance speech, calling him a little bit of a B-word, it escalated their philosophical disagreement into a public feud. Elliott's problem with Campion wasn't about her gender, despite accusations of sexism. It was about her approach to the Western genre. Elliott believed that Campion, as a New Zealand filmmaker, fundamentally misunderstood the American West. Her film's psychological complexity and artistic ambition impressed critics, but Elliott saw it as pretentious filmmaking that missed the essential truth of Western life. Campion's response to Elliott's criticism was sharp and personal. She dismissed his authority on cowboy authenticity, pointing out that he was an actor, not a real cowboy. The comment stung because it struck at the heart of Elliott's identity. His belief that his rural upbringing and decades of Western roles had given him genuine insight into the culture he portrayed. The feud revealed the fundamental divide between Elliott's old-school approach to Westerns and contemporary filmmakers' more complex, psychologically nuanced interpretations. Elliott believed Westerns should be about universal themes of honor, struggle, and survival. Campion's film explored repressed sexuality, toxic masculinity, and psychological manipulation, themes that Elliott felt were foreign to the genre's essential spirit. Perhaps the most painful entry on Elliott's list is Jeff Bridges, because their relationship began with genuine mutual respect and admiration. When they worked together on The Big Lebowski, they seemed like kindred spirits. both grounded, authentic actors who brought quiet dignity to their roles. Elliott's disappointment with Bridges wasn't about a specific incident or disagreement. It was about watching someone he considered a brother in arms gradually change after achieving greater success. Bridges' Oscar win for Crazy Heart marked a turning point in their relationship, as Elliott watched his friend become more involved in Hollywood's elite circles. The change was subtle but significant to Elliott. Bridges became less accessible, more polished in interviews, more conscious of his status as an Oscar winner. Elliott felt he was losing the down-to-earth actor he'd admired and gaining a more calculated Hollywood figure. Elliott's comment about "some folks change, others just show who they always were" was widely interpreted as referring to Bridges. It wasn't cruel or vindictive. It was the quiet disappointment of someone who felt abandoned by a friend who had chosen success over authenticity. The silence between Elliott and Bridges became more pronounced over time. No more joint appearances, no public support for each other's projects. For Elliott, this represented the saddest kind of professional loss, not the dramatic end of a friendship, but its quiet dissolution. Elliott's list of difficult actors reveals a seventh target that's harder to pin down but equally important to understand: the modern Hollywood system itself. Each of these actors represents a different aspect of what Elliott sees as the industry's decline: the replacement of authenticity with technique, substance with spectacle, and character with celebrity. Elliott's frustrations aren't just about individual actors, they're about an entire culture that has moved away from the values he holds dear. He's watched Hollywood become more focused on social media presence than screen presence, more interested in headlines than honest storytelling. The actors on Elliott's list succeeded in a system that Elliott believes has lost its way. They represent different paths to success that bypass the slow, methodical approach to craft that Elliott believes is essential. Whether through technical skill without cultural understanding, chaos disguised as commitment, or celebrity status masquerading as talent, each represents a shortcut Elliott never took and can't respect. At 80, Sam Elliott's willingness to name these actors reveals something profound about his character and his relationship with Hollywood. He's reached a point where maintaining diplomatic silence matters less than defending the principles that have guided his career. Elliott's criticisms aren't about personal animosity. They're about professional standards. He believes that acting is a craft that requires dedication, authenticity, and respect for the truth of human experience. When he sees actors who violate these principles, he can't remain silent, even if speaking out damages his reputation for diplomacy. The actors on Elliott's list have achieved success, critical acclaim, and popular recognition. But in Elliott's view, they've done so while compromising the very values that make acting worthwhile. His willingness to speak against them, even at potential cost to his own career, reveals the depth of his commitment to the craft he loves. Elliott's stance represents more than personal preference. It's a defense of a particular approach to acting that he fears is disappearing from Hollywood. In an industry increasingly focused on spectacle and celebrity, Elliott stands as a guardian of older values: restraint, authenticity, and the quiet dignity of honest work. Whether you agree with Elliott's assessments or not, his willingness to defend these principles at 80 years old reveals something admirable about his character. He's chosen integrity over diplomacy, authenticity over popularity, and truth over convenience. In a town built on compromise, that kind of unwavering commitment to principle is as rare as it is admirable. The 7 actors Sam Elliott couldn't stand working with represent more than personal conflicts. They embody the ongoing tension between old Hollywood values and contemporary approaches to the craft. Elliott's list is really a manifesto about what he believes acting should be, and his criticisms reveal as much about his own character as they do about the actors he names. In the end, Elliott's willingness to break his silence at 80 isn't about settling old scores. It's about defending the principles that have guided his extraordinary career. Whether Hollywood is listening or not, Sam Elliott has said his piece, and, true to form, He's said it with the quiet authority of a man who has never compromised his values for anyone or anything.